Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Amplify. Next up, we have Emily and Maya with Stories of Consent, and we're going to hear a little bit more about their project and what we can learn from them.
Hi, I'm Emily.
Hi, I'm Maya.
Okay, so if you can let us know, what would be like a simple description of your project and like what you're kind of focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're the co-founders of Stories of Consent, and Stories of Consent is a digital project sharing real, personal, community-based stories about consent. Essentially, what we found was that in 13 states currently, there are discussions of consent happening within high schools, but in all the other states, consent is not mandated in sex education curriculum. And as a result, young people kind of continue to have a difficult time learning the tools to practice consent and to give consent. And so our project tries to use stories as a means of community-based education to learn about consent and learn how collectively we can practice a better culture around it.
Great. And then just like a small follow-up question. Do you find that social media and technology has worsened some of these situations that you're looking to kind of bring knowledge to?
I think for us, social media has been a really powerful tool in starting this conversation, just because, particularly within a lot of states that are leaning to be more conservative, these are difficult conversations to have in formal educational settings because of the laws and restrictions around them. Presently, there's a lot of laws in US states called abstinence-only sex education, which mandates that either sex is not taught under the idea that young people won't have sex if they're not taught it, which we know is false, or is taught with fairly reductive paradigms, which means that unfortunately, as we kind of ourselves and as other organizations try to change those laws, we also need different ways of educating young people about consent. And so I think for us, social media has been a really powerful tool in that. Obviously, there's kind of a thunderstorm of information throughout social media related to sexual violence, particularly in the space of victim blaming. And so part of what our project is trying to do is to use social media differently to talk about consent in a way that educates people that are perhaps using it in improper ways and can kind of fill in the space of the formal classroom setting as we continue to try to change those laws.
Yeah, great. Okay. Now, to give us a little bit more context and background, can you let us know where you all first started with your project before our cohort this year, and then where you are now? So really, we just want to hear a little bit about more of your why and your journey of how you started and how you're ending.
Yeah, we were able to start this project in large because of Lookup and the Oak and Tides Foundation. Before joining the cohort, Stories of Consent was an idea that Emily and I had been thinking about for a long time, but weren't really sure if we wanted to take action just because of the initial financial cost of it. Um, and I really don't think we would have started it when we did if it hadn't been for Lookup. In terms of where we are now, in our first 3 months, we've collected over 100 stories of affirmative consent from individuals that range in the age between 15 and 35 in 9 different countries. We've had our stories read by more than 300,000 people, and we've collaborated with 20 organizations in part to do that. And we've secured international travel. We're here in Australia, and lodging for a month to do consent education and policy research.
Oh, great. Okay, can you give us a little like sneak preview into what you've been working on in real time right now while you're in Australia?
Yeah, so part of what we're in Australia to do is to try to figure out how consent education could work in a formal classroom setting within the US. Australia was one of the first countries with kind of an analogous political situation to the US to mandate national consent education for all students between middle and high school. And so we're here in part to kind of try to figure out how we can adapt that model to the US, especially after the Biden guidance, which came out I think 2 days ago for you guys. It's 3 days
Okay.
ago for us because we're a day ahead of you in Australia. But that essentially stated that consent education is necessary for young people, but that there aren't currently formal plans to nationally mandate that. So part of what we're here to try to figure out is an organizing strategy to make that happen in the US.
Great. That's amazing. I'm so glad that you were afforded another opportunity to extend your work and to actually be in Australia right now. That's amazing. So I'm really proud of you both, because I have been able to walk with you from the very beginning parts and then to see how everything has come to fruition, and it's beautiful. Like the website and the stories that you've gathered, they're really great. And I'm just so proud, but I'll stop from gushing for a second. I think our next question here is going to be, do you view your innovation thriving in other communities? And if so, how? This is kind of like how adaptable do you think that this would be?
Yeah, I think that we've been really excited by the reception of our project and the willingness of other communities to drive that story collection on their own as well. So through our model campuses and organizations from around the world, they can do this online or in person, can join in on our goal of making consent more personable and accessible through story collection. And I think that like one of the ways that's done is we have like a toolkit, a social toolkit as well as an outreach toolkit. And those are the two ways they can do this online or in person.
And I
Okay.
think a really good example of this actually is our campaign with Drexel, shout out Secret Drexel, that came out, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what we did with them was at kind of an annual meeting with all the heads and leadership boards of frat organizations on their campus. We put together a place like in person where students that are part of fraternities on campus could share stories of consent. And so part of what we're thinking about kind of through collaborations like that is how we can extend this project to spaces that maybe are not like survivor oriented or something like that, while still having it be the type of thing that people are interested in participating in. And we actually found that to date, that was the campaign that we did that had the largest like group-based story collection, which was really cool to see. And so like, as we kind of think about how this project extends across multiple communities, I think partnerships are a really important way into that, to kind of get the local context of how people are working through these issues and how our project can be adapted to those.
Yeah, great, great. Now, for like the nitty-gritty of the inner workings on your side, was there ever a moment where you both were working and you thought, oh my gosh, we can't recover from this setback or pivot? Or did anything happen where you kind of had a moment of like freak out a little bit?
I think Maya and I are both pretty optimistic and solutions oriented people. Admittedly, we're also both probably a little bit stubborn. And so I think that there wasn't ever really a moment where we were like, we really can't recover from this. But when we launched the project, we were quite surprised in a good way by the reception of this. We had a lot of organizations kind of reaching out to partner. And so the early stages of this project, I'd say like within the first month of our launch, were really about capacity building to make sure that we can make those partnerships happen in a way that were impactful and meaningful, and that we could kind of distribute our energy as co-founders to across different projects well.
Yeah, great. Oh my gosh, that was like the nicest answer that someone could respond back with. And then as you reflect on your time from January to now, what was the greatest part and what was the toughest part?
I think the best part of being in this cohort was the kind of initial vote of confidence in it. This was an idea that Maya and I had had for a while, and I think we needed somebody else to tell us it was a good idea as well in some ways in order to start it, because that kind of initial push was really helpful, both from like kind of a personal level of being, you know, a vote of confidence in the project, and also from monetary level of the website was our biggest barrier, I think, to starting this. The toughest part has, as I just said, been the momentum of it. We're still kind of working through that, but I think we've started to develop a really good system for handling partnerships across kind of a variety of different disciplines and communities and fields, and figuring out too how we can do those partnerships in a way that's sustainable to kind of create a lasting impact with the project.
Yeah, nice. So you're saying that the success is hard to manage a little bit, right? Because if you're gaining all this traction, which this is actually something really positive and really good. So that's,
Yeah, I think that like the success is great, but like the sustainability to
yeah.
it is really important and
Mhm.
something we thought a lot about since working on our project before, which was Space to Speak.
Yeah.
So I think like we were just trying to figure out how that experience could be different. This
Yeah.
experience could be different from that one, just so that we could sustain this work longer. I think part of that was centering joy versus trauma. And then the other part is really figuring out how Emily and I work as a team for this project specifically.
Yeah, great. Now I have another like follow-up question for you. Is there anything then that you're doing for yourself specifically as you're managing these successes? Because I imagine that our other teams probably have some experience with this and they might want to know how you're going about managing your wins and your successes and keeping yourself like on track. Is there anything specific that you can maybe speak to?
I think there are a couple of different things. As a kind of personal motivation piece, we keep a slideshow of messages that people have sent us about the project. And I find myself coming back to that. I think you do as well.
Yes.
As co-founders from kind of a program's point of view, we meet quite often, usually once a week, sometimes twice a week, to discuss partnerships that are coming up. We also plan based on the month. So we do a lot of kind of proactive work to make sure that we don't have to do some of this last minute. And I think we also tend to check in fairly consistently about where we see the project going, the types of moves we need to make that happen, and kind of where like we're excited and where we think there are things that we need to work on as well, both as from a project perspective and as individuals together.
Nice. Great. And then if we were to jump 4 years ahead with your project, like staying with us and growing in real time, what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think in 4 years, we hope to have collected thousands of stories of affirmative consent from hopefully hundreds of companies, countries, and just aid in the creation of legislative change. We're thinking, like Emily mentioned, about trying to reduce the number of states that require abstinence only, as well as implementing consent education in national curricula, especially in the other states that currently don't mandate that. And then more broadly, we hope to become an established nonprofit so that we can shape consent around the world, for the betterment in general of our collective global health.
Nice. Great. Okay, cool. This is kind of like this part is now your like Sean Evans moment where you get to like plug and promote your things that you have going on. Is there anything that our audience should know of like maybe how they should connect with you or what you have coming up in the future?
Yeah, well, we're on track to host our first ever in-person event here in Sydney in, let's see, a few weeks, alongside two incredible Australian orgs that are sexual violence based prevention orgs, which are What Were You Wearing and the Survivor Hub. So if you haven't heard of them, definitely go follow them and check them out. So we're definitely gearing up for that. And then we're just going to continue to collaborate with organizations from around the world to further this mission of sharing personal community-based stories of consent. And in terms of the best ways to connect with us, I would say one, via our site at storiesofconsent.com. It's where you can read stories of affirmative consent and you can submit your own. Two would be Instagram, Stories of Consent. And you can access like educational resources that we often collaborate with other organizations or individuals. And then lastly, if you're interested in collaborating with us or you have an idea that you want to tell us about, definitely shoot us an email at hello@storiesofconsent.com.
Amazing. Great. Okay. I'll make sure to have all of that information live when we have this going on for Amplify in the chat below. And then also as we end out, do you have any questions to ask of your fellow cohort members that you might want to like get a little more insight on?
Yeah, I think we definitely want to direct this one to Impact Playground.
Okay.
Connected a bit with them and are really excited about their project. And we're wondering what success looks like to them and how they're planning on measuring that impact.
Perfect. Great. Well, again, thank you both so much for dedicating your time to kind of changing the sphere of everything, and really like to again to have seen you start from this idea and to now have a full working website, and now you're in Australia doing all of these things. Like, I'm so proud and I'm so honored, and I hope that you're celebrating your win, and I can't wait to see how you continue to grow and everything in the space, and really just want to thank you for being here, and yeah, we're just so grateful.
Thank you so much. We really like have deeply enjoyed being a part of this, and genuinely like don't think that this probably would have happened in the way that it did without you all. So seriously,
Oh,
thank you.
of course, anytime. We're so happy to.